this over on the left, right? Like we teach them the digraphs, we teach them the blends, vowel teams, all of that. But then there's no transition from this to what we see over here. It's like all of a sudden, as soon as they read single syllable words, we expect them to then know how to read multisyllabic words. And it's just not a smooth transition. And so that's kind of what I want to do tonight is I want to help us to make that transition from this single syllable world that we've been living in K1-2 into being able to decode any multisyllabic word we come across. Hi, everyone. Thank you. I still see a bunch of people joining. So thank you guys so much for being here. So I'm going to start now with my tips. My very first tip is I want you to start teaching the 6 syllable types inside of multisyllabic words. And this is something that I got wrong for a while. When I had 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders who were still struggling with reading, I would start teaching them the 6 syllable types. But I taught them only in single syllable words, right? So I would teach them, okay, well, high is an open syllable, and then I add T to it. It closes it up and makes it hit. You know, go is an open syllable. I add a T to close it up and it makes it got. But the truth is, those older kids that I had in intervention, it wasn't that they couldn't read single syllable words. They have known how to read high and go and tip and lap for years. What they don't know how to do is how to decode that within multisyllabic words. So this year, excuse me, I need to take a sip of water. I know it's a wine glass, but it's just water, I promise. It makes me feel fancy. So this year, when I first started with my older kids, what I did is I started teaching them the 6 syllable types within 2 syllable words. That's where I started, was 2 syllable words. So I started by teaching them open and closed syllables. Then I moved into magic E, then vowel teams, then R controlled vowels, and then consonant LE. And I found it to be so much more effective for them because I wasn't spending 9 weeks simply teaching them vowel teams, right? Like that is not what's going to help these, especially these older kiddos, move to the place that we need them to move. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to stop sharing for a second so that I can show you one way that I do this. And if you have followed me for a while, you've probably seen me do this. So what I will do is this, I will give my students dry erase note cards. So dry erase note cards, if you want to put some on your board, you can just put little magnetic strips on the back. So what I do is this. This is when I'm teaching them 2 syllables. I will put a word on the board. I say, if you know it, don't say it, right? If you know it, don't say it. And what I will have them do is underline the vowels because our vowels are our driving force. Every syllable must have a written vowel. And then from that, we determine how many syllables do we have. So since I have these 2 vowels, I know it's going to be 2 syllables. And what I'm trying to teach them here is that they need to be able to flex the vowel sounds. So they might do something like pot. Sorry, I'm trying to do this upside down. Patent. And I would say, yes, that does say patent, but I don't know of a word that's like that. Could you try opening up that syllable to an open syllable? And we would go, oh, okay, it's potent. And that is how I introduce the syllable types with them. I am not just doing hi, go, she. I'm teaching it to them within the realm of multisyllabic words. Feel free to stop me if you have a question. I'm going to revisit this a little bit later in the presentation. Okay, so another guideline. Really want you to introduce morphology. We cannot get our kiddos to where they need to be if they don't have an understanding about meaning parts. So I don't expect anybody to memorize all of the I don't expect anybody to memorize all of the definitions. This is free. I thought I had the link, but I don't have it, so I'll get in a little bit. But this is my definition cheat sheet. so that you can teach it to your kiddos. If somebody does happen to know where it is and you want to drop the link, I would love that, but I have the wrong link on my thing. So, but if we introduce morphology, we are allowing our students to then see word parts that have meaning. So what I mean is this: you will have kids that will start seeing cron and they'll know that that's a part that means time, or kids that will start seeing fully and they'll know it means in a full way. So the more that we can teach them about parts of words that make sense, the easier it's going to be for them to immediately and effortlessly retrieve it. So when you think about orthographic mapping in K through 2, those high frequency words, right? Like we want them to look at from and be able to immediately know, okay, that's from. Well, orthographic mapping needs to happen with bigger words too. But the only way that that can happen is if we are explicitly teaching these things and if we are giving them the practice, because we want multisyllabic words to come as automatically to our big kids as high frequency words come to our little kids. And I'm not going to belabor morphology because some of you are probably sick of hearing me talk about it. But if you're kind of new around here, I do have a Morphology 101 blog post, and I'm dropping that in the comments right now. Okay. Thank you, Leslie, for doing that. I really appreciate it. All right. So the next guideline is I want you to use real text. In K1 and 2, we are using decodable text in small group a lot, right? Because we want to make sure that we are giving them that practice and the specific skills that we are teaching them. However, we have to keep in mind that decodable texts are not the end goal, right? Our end goal is that our children should be able to read whatever text that they want and they should be able to understand it. And the only way we are going to get there is if we begin to expose them to real text. So a lot of times people will ask me about when I stop using decodables. Personally, for me, and this is another one of those things where there's no research that says do it like this. But for me, once I see that students have successfully decoded most single syllable words and we're moving into multisyllabic words, that is then when I bring in those real texts. So I don't look at it as, oh, like, because you can see this is a level Q, right? Oh, you're a level Q. We're all going to be reading level Qs. Instead, I will use that level as kind of like a starting point. Like, okay, so it's approximately here. And then from then, I think, do my kids have the background knowledge to understand this? Do they have the vocabulary to understand it? I encourage you to think about the text that you are reading in a couple of ways. One way is that you can do content sets, right? So you can see all of these texts right here I got from ReadWorks. ReadWorks is 100% free for teachers. They have amazing articles. So I pulled 4 articles about ancient Egypt. And the reason this is important is because when you have content knowledge like this, think of it like Velcro. So say I know a little bit about mummies, right? Okay, well then the next time when I read about the pyramids and they start talking about mummies, I already have some knowledge on that. Now I can build my knowledge. So every time we give them the same kind, something around the same content, we are growing that knowledge. And then I really like using series. This is a series from Raz Kids, if anybody has it. And basically, I decided to do, it's called the Hollow Kids. And I decided to use this because I was forcing my kids to learn about electricity and I could tell that I was boring them. And so I was like, all right, we gotta make a shift. So we decided to do the Hollow Kids for spooky season. And series are really good because then children get to know the characters more. They get to understand like how an author develops a story. So if you are reading nonfiction, think about organizing it around themes, whether it's ancient Egypt, electricity, whatever. And then when you're looking at books, think about organizing either through series or you could think about using like different themes, sort of like perseverance or honesty, things like that. But once you are getting to this point where children are reading multisyllabic words, I really think we need to start using real text and start pointing out those things in those real texts. It will not be as contrived as what you see in K through 2, but the truth is we have to work through that awkward part and we have to give children exposure to lots of different kinds of text because that is how we become better readers. Okay. Now, the next thing I want to say is we cannot shy away from the schwa. I don't know about you, but there was a long time where I would only give my kids pure words. And a pure word is a word where all the sounds play exactly fair. So if I was teaching digraphs, every digraph word was 100% fair. I wasn't teaching them anything that was weird. But when you are teaching children multisyllabic words, you have to embrace the schwa because the schwa sound is the most common vowel sound we come across. And this doesn't have to be something labor intensive. So for example, I think the word was continue. And I had a kid and he read it you. And that's when I say you are so right. That does look like continue, but this is that schwa sound. And here we're going to say continue. And it was really cool for me because I had a 5th grade boy this year, and he is one that I've been working with for a long time. And he read a word, I can't remember what the word is, but he originally read it with the short vowel sound, and then he recognized it didn't make sense, and on his own, he flexed it to a schwa sound. So it is only if we kind of embrace the messiness of it that our kids are going to get it. And we don't have to make it something extensive. Just when it comes up in a text, be like, that is one of those schwa sounds. And I used to call schwa the lazy vowel, but now I'm kind of like, oh, I don't want to use the word lazy. So I call it the empty vowel now. So schwa actually comes from Hebrew and it means empty. And it's because it's this like lessening of a sound. And I love saying it's an empty vowel. I think the kids think it's cool too. So don't shy away from the schwa because it's not going anywhere. But now this is what you really came here for. You want to know practical tips for how we can practice multisyllabic words. So I'm going to go over each one of those. So this is a great point for me to stop and to share that Google form again. So this is a Google form, and all you have to do is enter your name, and then at the end of this, I will be drawing 10 names from a wheel to get a free copy of my new resource that I'm going to share with y'all. Okay, so as important as it is for us to practice decoding multisyllabic words, we cannot forget about the encoding of it. One of the biggest pitfalls that I see across the board is that we will teach a skill and we will only practice that skill. So for example, if our prefix for the week was re, every single word we're practicing is re. What we really need to do is this interleaving, right? We need to make sure that the new skills and the old skills are mixed in together because that is when it's going to have the most power. I think the clearest example of the issue of not doing this is when you teach Magic E. So we all know that if you teach Magic E, kids are going to start putting an E on the end of everything, right? So it is only when we are comparing to the other things that it really starts to stick. Once again, this does not have to be anything labor intensive. If you have paper like this that is just sound boxes, instead of having kids map by sounds, have them map by syllables or morphemes. This is where it gets tricky because sometimes morphemes aren't a single syllable. For example, in the word unremarkable, a bull is actually 2 syllables, but able is 1 morpheme. So the way that you have kids break it apart is going to depend really on their morphological awareness. Like if they know able is a suffix, have them put it together. If they don't, I think it's okay for them to do a bull. Another example of this is shun. So technically eruption, the T should be with rup. But I teach my kids TION as shun, and so they keep it together. So you can see it is just not as clear cut as single syllable words, and I think that that's why it's been so difficult for us, right? Like it's not like I can teach you that a digraph th makes the th or the sound, but when I get to this point, it's a lot messier, and I've kind of just had to embrace the mess, with it, honestly. So you can do sound boxes, or you can even just do dictation. I will literally have my kids open up their notebook, have them write 1 through 5. The first 4 words are just review words of the different morphemes that I've taught. So for example, ing, ed, the CVC doubling rule. And then I will give them a sentence. It can be that simple, but our kids have got to have practice, not just with the current skills, but also with all the other skills that we've taught them. So if you are doing a prefix of the week or a suffix of the week, go ahead and do it like you've been doing. But how about instead of all 10 of these words being this week's skill, make the first 5 this week's skill, and then the rest of them can be a review of the other skills that you've taught. An easy peasy way that you can have kids practice decoding multisyllabic words is by choosing words from the text that they are reading. So for example, in that Hollow Kids series that I had shown y'all, I don't know where it's right there, we read one called Scaredy Camp. And in Scaredy Camp, I had chosen these words. All I did was put these words, I will put these words on the board. I will give them those little boards like I had shown you before, and I will ask them to split apart the vocabulary words on their boards, and then we talk about it. So for the first one, they would have two boards, and it would be downpour. Then the next one would be inspected, violently, voracious. And I choose words that I want to teach them through vocabulary. And I also choose words that I think they might struggle to pronounce. So even if the only thing you took from this was taking your words and practicing both the pronunciation and the meaning of them, I think that that would be a fabulous way for you to start your instruction. So let me kind of just show you how I would, like if I had my kids do inspected. So this is the pattern that I teach my kids. When we come to a word that we do not know, and they don't do this for every single word because that would be extremely labor intensive, we use this as a scaffold, and then we hope that we can take that scaffold away. So say it's that word that we had just had on the board, and of course my dry erase marker is missing now. Oh, I got it. Okay. So after I have started to teach morphology, the first thing that I have my kids do is I say this: do you see any prefixes or suffixes you know? And they're like, oh yeah, ed, I know ed. And they might know n. Okay, so we know we have a prefix, we know we have a suffix. Then I'm going to underline any vowels I have left. So I know that I'm going to have 3 syllables because I have a prefix, a suffix, one more vowel, that makes 3. And then I ask my kids to split it up on their little syllaboards. I ask them to split it up and we take it from there, because if I could hold this up, my kids know how to read in. My kids can certainly read spect, and my kids can read id. So if we teach them to break it apart into chunks that they already know, then they have a much easier time reading it. So that is what I will have them do with those little, you can buy like the fancy ones, but I think that the dry erase note cards, if you just look on Amazon for dry erase note cards, I think that they work beautifully. Now, I want to share with you guys this new resource that I've made and that I have been using with my kids. So I started making these honestly because I wanted something physical in front of them that was like a step up from this. Like that was one step removed from that. So let me show you. Hold up. Okay. So I have made, and these all go with my Anglo-Saxon morphology, Anglo-Saxon, Latin, and Greek, all the ones that I have for like my PowerPoints, my review decks, all of this, it's the same thing. But I made these sheets that focus on a single morpheme. So for example, this one is flex. And then basically what I'm asking my kids to do is exactly what we just did with the note cards. Instead, I'm asking them to do it on a piece of paper. So we're going to start the exact same way. You can either do this on a piece of paper, or you could put this inside of a dry erase sleeve. So for example, I would ask my kids, okay, well, do you see any prefixes or suffixes you know? And they would say, oh, well, I know ibble. So we would underline that, and then we underline our vowel. Based off of that, we know that we are going to have two boxes. So this one's pretty easy because it's just flexible. And we would say, okay, well, what does that mean? It means that you are able to flex pretty well. All right, so then I would go to the next one. And when I've been doing this with my kids, we've been doing like the first two together, and then I've been asking them to do the rest on their own, and I'm coming behind and checking and seeing that they're able to pronounce the words. All right, same thing. Do you see any prefixes or suffixes? Well, I see in and I see a bowl, and I have an E left. So I know I'm going to have 1, 2, 3 syllables. In, flex, able. So when you get to some other places though, and I'm going to go down here, it gets a little messy. This was pretty clear cut, but it can definitely get pretty messy. If you're wondering what that is on the floor down there, that is my dog. Okay, so if I look over here, so I have Lee, okay, and I have re, I have an E and an I consonant E. So I know I'm going to need 1, 2, 3, 4 syllable words, okay? So I have re, flex, is, reflexively. I was trying to find one where, oh, let's do this one right here. So same thing, do you see any prefixes or suffixes? Okay, well, I see in and I see shun, and then I have an E. So I have 1, 2, 3 syllables. In, flex, shun. I keep the T with shun, even though it technically goes there. If you want them to put the T on the other one, that is totally up to you. I say just be consistent. But I made these because I am using real text with my students, I don't always have it super controlled for the practice that they have. So if I'm teaching you the root flex, I want to be able to give you practice with that rule. And I know that my text that we're reading might not have it. So I use these now to give my kiddos that practice in the specific morphemes that I'm teaching them. Yeah, so someone said, I don't understand how ibble counts as one syllable in the first two boxes. Fantastic question. Thank you so much for asking that. It's because we are stressing meaning above all else. So if a prefix or a suffix is 2 syllables, I'm going to keep it in one box because I want to preserve the meaning of the word. Able is the meaning part. That is the morpheme. So if your kids don't know able or ibble yet, they might put it in 2 boxes. But if they have been taught that specific morpheme, I want them to keep it together. Another example of that would be like under or super. Yes, it is 2 syllables, but once you are getting to multisyllabic words, you need to stress meaning above all else, because that is how they are going to have a better vocabulary. That is how they're going to understand what they're reading, by understanding the specific meanings of the words. And like I said, it's messy, and I don't think that there's any way to avoid the mess. I would just say, hold them responsible for the morphemes that you have taught them, and give a little bit of flexibility on the other ones, as long as it doesn't affect the pronunciation or the meaning of the word. Okay, so I have actually made 100 and I think it's 28 of these, 128 of these, based off of Anglo-Saxon, Latin, and Greek, and I'm going to give away 10 of them now.